Community Schools Board meeting to order. If everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, as we note in the minutes, all the board members are present except for Mr. Espacet. We'll dispense with the roll call since we're not doing electronic tonight. We have one deletion from the agenda. It was Jennifer Meredith at MES, first grade dual language teacher. That item has been deleted from the agenda. Do we have any other additions or deletions to the agenda? Nope. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Mr. Brubaker. We have a second. Mr. Hensley. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Hearing of patrons at this time on agenda. Any agenda items? It appears we don't have any. Presentation, the Icarian Plunge, Rhonda Silver and Dr. Lippy.
Well, it's going to be very short for me. But I'd like to recognize, is this on? Yeah. I'd like to recognize Hannah Bernhardt and Rhonda Silver. This year 3 from the comeback, because this is the second year. So the Icarian Plunge is something that you guys did a long time ago, and we kind of brought it back. It's been great. It's been a fantastic success, and so I'll bring them up and let them kind of talk about what they've done here. So we'll hear from them.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for letting us speak here tonight. It really is a privilege to be able to share our work with you all. We are the Manchester Icarian Plunge Committee, and I think we'll just start by introducing ourselves and really what we do for this program. So my name is Jade, and I'm a senior and a member of the Marketing Committee. So I work in advertising, announcements, social media, and really just finding new locations and ways through which we can sell the plunge.
My name is Frank Roth, and I'm a senior. I'm the lead designer of the Icarian Plunge. I've done most of the design work for it, and I helped to lead it.
I'm Abby Love. I'm a junior, and I'm a part of the marketing and the editing positions.
I'm Jeff Shoemaker. I'm an editor. I do mostly like QC. Very important.
All right, so just to get started, I will go into a little bit of detail about what exactly the plunge is. If you're not already aware, the Icarian Plunge is a totally student-published catalog of over 40 unique pieces of fine art. And our committee, our team, takes upon this long-term project to really craft and deliver the best possible collection of artwork that we can put out to the community. And as we are speaking to you all tonight, we will be demonstrating that on the board with our little presentation, just showing some of our artwork, some of our writing, and our creation process.
So putting together the Icarian Plunge has been an experience. We started last year, and it was a learning process. We started using Publisher, which we used to put it together, and that was a whole learning idea, trying to do composition, trying to get everything together, and then creation time after we had figured it all out took, I'd say, over 20 hours, because we were still learning. We had to cut everything, we had to print everything, we had to staple everything, and it was just a big learning process of how to put this all together in an effective and cheap manner. Then this year, we moved on to Adobe InDesign, because we kind of wanted to streamline it and make it much easier for up-and-coming students to be able to continue on this. because Jade, Jack, and I, all of us are seniors, so we want to make sure that we can continue this on. So we don't want this to end with just us. And moving on to creation of this year, it's been much better. After we had everything printed out, which went very smoothly, we were able to create around 80-ish books in around an hour and a half. And it was a great time for all of us to bond and just learn about each other. And something interesting that happened to me yesterday was I got a letter from a parent of a student who graduated in the 90s. Their name was Heidi, and they actually did the Caring Plunge when they were in high school. So that was really interesting to hear that, because they actually saw us in the newspaper. Because we did an interview for the newspaper, which kind of helped get us out there more, and that's helped us sell a few more copies. And that's where they heard about this. So I got to go over there and give them a copy, and we talked about the Caring Plunge, how it's changed, how it's really helped us as a staff connect with each other and help us become closer.
So why is the Icarian Plunge so important? It's a wonderful way for students to display their talents, especially since it is so difficult for young artists to get their art and their writing out there. It's important to share their hard work and expression. It is important to share their hard work and expression so that we can encourage boldness and creativity in our community.
So the copies of Untitled Chapter, we've tried to make it much easier for people to purchase them and try to get them in as many places as possible. Right now, we're currently selling them for $5, and if you buy 4 of them, you can get 5 of them for $20, and you can get them in a variety of places that can be purchased in the office, in Mrs. Snover's room, and Mrs. Burnworth's room. So there are plenty of places to buy them. Thank you for your time, and remember, take the plunge and support local artists.
Alright, at this time we would like to open the discussion and presentation to any questions you guys may have. Okay.
Oh, wait, we have plenty. Who wants to go first?
So do you do an e-version of this as well?
We have
online sales?
We don't have any online sales for an e-version, though I think that would be a great suggestion, because that would be perfect to expand it out too, because we'd like to get this to as many people as we possibly can.
I got to tip my hat to you on the uphold, like when you're looking at your process and you're improving it, continuous improvement. Right on.
Thank you.
Not always what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah, it's been great. We've had fantastic help from our advisors, Mrs. Snover and Mrs. Burnworth, and some special help from Mr. David Zimweister. He's made it very easy, and their continued support makes it much better, and it's really improved our leadership skills in working together. I've learned a lot.
I don't have a question, but I would like to applaud your efforts for thinking about a succession plan so this can continue since the 4A are seniors, and I'd like to wish you good luck in the future.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Anybody else?
I'd just like to say you guys did a great job doing your presentation today. It was really nice. You're all well spoken. I appreciate that. I'd also love to see you guys get this out into the community. I mean, you're selling it to the school, but nobody else can see it. So it'd be great to see it out at a gas station or somewhere else in town that can buy a copy.
Yeah, I sure hope that's our plan. We're trying to move it out and trying to get as many people to buy as we can. And I really think talking to the people in the newspaper really helps, and I think that's going to get a lot more people invested.
I do have a suggestion that just popped in my head. I mean, you don't want to do it until your sales are done, but maybe you could take the last issue and donate some to the library, and maybe that would help get.
That's a fantastic idea. We'll have to consider that.
Robert, did you have something?
I just want to say, the Icarian Plunge had been around for a while, and I was kind of sad to hear that it did go away. But thank you to the advisors, but also the students for picking that back up. It's hard to get something going once it's kind of gone. So compliments to all of you and your leadership, and it's pretty impressive in the second year. What are there, 46 pages to this? And it's impressive the variety of things you have in here. It is unfortunate. I've seen the quality of student writing and the quality of their artwork, but I have that luxury because I can walk into the classroom and see it. But there's a lot of people in the community, parents, who won't have that opportunity. I know that the Visual and Performing Arts did a really cool winter showcase this year to invite people in to see some of those things, and this just, I think, adds to those opportunities for our students to show their talents to a much wider range. Because you guys get to see what they do each day, but there's a lot of people who don't. So this looks awesome. Thank you for. Do we get to keep these? I guess that's my question. So thank you. I appreciate it.
I did also want to tell you, if you haven't seen it, we were in the News Journal last week, and it was a really nice write-up that they did, and I thought Eric Christiansen did a great job. But there was a photo of the kids, but there's a really nice write-up, and it kind of expresses everything we were wanting, to say, and letting people know what we were doing at the plunge. So I appreciate that too. That kind of public support goes a long way for us. Thank you.
That's good, man.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, at this time we have a presentation from Garmin Miller, our architects.
Yes. We have Kurt South here from Garmin Miller, and then also Adam Whitmer from Hagerman. So they're going to be working very closely with each other for quite a while we work through our project. Unfortunately, selling all the bonds and stuff takes quite some time, but now we're starting to make some progress, and we wanted to invite them here to kind of share where we are and maybe kind of what some of those next steps are. So, gentlemen.
Sure. So good evening, everyone. So again, my name is Kurt South. I'm an architect with Garmin Miller, and I also serve as the project manager for the Manchester project. So we have a number of my teammates, whether they're electrical designers or other architects or landscape architects, and we started meeting with Adam and many of the people here in this room after the first of the year. And what we start with, the first several meetings are what we call master planning or visioning, where we look at the district as a whole, and we look at all the different buildings. We scan the existing buildings for photographs. We use that through our design, and then we also meet with various stakeholders to go through that process. And we look at the elementary building, we look at this building, we look at the high school, and we try to identify what all the needs are for the district. And I know a lot of that work had been done previously, and we were building upon that. So we started meeting right after the first of the year. We meet twice a month, and we've gone through all the different buildings and looked at those, and then the last few meetings we focused on what we're calling phase one, which is probably for the most part the main addition between this building and the high school, the cafeteria, kitchen, connector, that type of thing. So where we are right now is we finished what we call schematic design drawings, which is very preliminary, but it's enough information to be able to give Adam and his team the ability to put pricing together, so we have an idea where we are on the budget, because we all know that you have a set budget that we're working within. So we are very cognizant of that. So when we try to come up with a menu of items that we can get a price to, and then as a school you can decide which ones are the highest priority and which ones can wait for the future, but at least we've already talked through those and we know what's being planned and that type of thing. So I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but so the pricing is underway. once we have that and have some more meetings, then the next steps will be continue to meet twice a month. We'll continue to refine what the first phase of the project will be. We'll put together drawings that are even much more detailed and within the budget and ready for the bidders to bid on and the contractors to build from. So that'll take the next several months, and hopefully we'll see construction here in the near future. So, yeah.
So as Kurt's talking about the next several months, we did hit our first deadline. So as pre-construction manager and on the estimating and pre-construction side, I'm also a project manager moving forward with the project. So school gets me the whole time, whether they like it or not. Our first goal was to have some schematic drawings mid to late March, and to have some type of a schematic budget or a schedule of values, which goes into probably a lot more detail than most people would expect at that phase. But we wanted to hit that for the end of March, and we did, which was great. That usually means it's a good start to a positive project, and you can start hitting those pre-construction timelines. Talking about design development, those more detailed drawings. Obviously, we've got a lot of conversations going right now on constructability, which is mostly my role as support Garment Miller is constructability, what's available, what's going to impact the schedule. Market changes are ever changing now more than before. So we've got some materials that we may have available now, but or didn't have available 2 months ago that are available now. So that's my role to keep the team and the owners informed of what is current and what best direction to head to get the project completed and within budget. So our goal is in May to have that design development phase kind of done, and then I have planned for some early procurement bid phases to go out in June. So we want to procure mechanical equipment, air handling units, chillers, stuff like that, and structural steel. We want to get foundations in the ground this fall. So we've identified as a team what that timeline looks like, and we're definitely on track with it. But those are kind of a brief overview of kind of working into the summer, and then don't want to forget we've got some innovation areas that we're also working through pricing on, which is secure entrances to the high school and the elementary. So that's kind of my thunder.
Since you're at the mic, would you share with the board the pro color, the way that they'll be able to check on the project individually? And Kurt, would you, after Adam does it, would you touch on how often you plan on coming to the board meetings and updating the board, please?
Yes, I'll hit my part of this question too. So everybody should have gotten an email invitation, and I know it's pretty early right now. We just wanted to get it out there so everybody can create a username. So Procore is our internet database where we house all the information for a project, and we'll have access for you guys to see the drawings, to see schedules, pertinent information for the ownership. And we've given a little bit of a crash course to a few folks, and hopefully they can train. But ideally, I would spend some time with the board at another day and do a walkthrough on how to navigate through that software. But what it does is it usually gives access to all the drone photos, all the job site photos, current drawings, current project schedule, all that pertinent information that an owner really needs to have to understand where a project sits. So that's part of what we provide as a construction solution. And then board updates. We committed during our interview phase when we were hoping to be selected that something we like to do is we will do a drone video once a month, and I will come with a project update. You'll have a project update sheet once a month. So I will be in front of this board once a month with drone videos and project updates and photographs to answer questions, schedule concerns, questions, just curiosity, stuff like that. We'll field those questions and communicate as much of the project from a construction side of things as possible. So.
Yeah, and from our point of view, I have all of the board meetings on my calendar, so I'm ready, willing, and able to attend all of them or however we see fit. So yeah, we'll just communicate, and I'll be happy to be at any meeting that you have.
And
I was just going to thank them and ask you if you had something.
Yeah, so, when one of the things that we were looking for out of an architect and a CMC is just that communication element, and one of the things that checked out very highly with Garland Miller and with Hegerman was the fact that they have great standing with especially the school projects they've done in the past. They understand how we operate. Their communication with the boards was something that we found to be a big plus. So, I've had some experience with them, but I think they'll do a great job of keeping you guys in the loop. And coming back about once a month, especially when things start happening. It's a little more exciting than just seeing things on paper once things start going. And the drone footage, I've seen that firsthand and some time lapse, and it's pretty cool to see how it works. So.
Any other board questions or comments?
Adam, I still have not received that invitation.
It's okay. I'll first send it over. Because we checked. It must not be put in
What types of concerns do we have? Any like procurement or?
That's ever changing. So I think as long as we hit the ground running and we stay in constant sync, we're okay with that. Budget's always a concern no matter what job it is. Anytime you get a project, everybody wants to put as much as they possibly can into a budget. So as long as we identify early what those priorities are, and even understanding parts and pieces of it. Simple examples. We've had a lot of conversations over the last 2 weeks about roof because one material wasn't going to be available for a year, and now it's available by November, and that material is substantially different cost than another one, but it may not be what the vision requires. So those conversations are going to happen weekly between Kurt and I throughout until we get to the committees. So no real concerns of any nature other than my constant concern is it available, and can I get it in time, and that can quickly change. So it's my job to just notify and plan accordingly and see past it.
Anybody else? Thank you, gentlemen.
Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kurt and Adam.
Thank you.
Financial report, Tanya.
All right. Put it up on the.
It's coming up.
Okay, all right.
Here it is.
Okay, so in at the end of March, our education fund, I decided this month I was going to make these a little larger. So I'm breaking your revenues into one slide and then expenses into the next slide. So hopefully it makes it a little more visible for everybody up here. So our budget month to date, we had revenue of $883,000 for the education fund, which brings us to a total of budget year to date that we have received $2,624,000 in the education fund, which is right on course where we expect to be. Then we've got on the next slide, we have had expenses. I guess my headers didn't come through on that. I will work on that for next month. I apologize. But that second column of numbers, we have had expenses of $835,000 for the month, which is $2.5 million for the year. So that's just a little bit more in revenue than expenses for the year so far, which is good. We like that. So I put on the next slide, then I did more of just a concise year-to-date summary for you. So again, the revenue here is $2.6 million with expenditures of $2.5 million year-to-date, leaving the year-to-date balance of $82,000. Our January operating balance was $1.3 million, bringing us to a total right now in the education fund of $1.38 million. We like to keep growing that a little bit, so we will work to continue to do that. We've had expenses when we can.
So moving on to the operations fund, the revenues, we had month-to-date revenue, $56,000. Again, we're not going to see a large revenue influx in this fund until we get our property tax distribution in June. And then we're expecting about I am estimating $1.7 million to come in from so about half of our, maybe a little more. That would be wonderful. But we've had year-to-date revenue of $169,000. Then our expenses, which are going to track a little higher, because that is our utilities, and we're paying salaries for our custodial and maintenance, and most of the office salaries are all coming out of this fund. So we've had expenses this month of $254,000, tracking to $816,000 for this year. So through the first 3 months, $816,000. And then when I looked here at the, I jumped to the wrong slide. So year to date, this is more telling. Year to date, again, we said revenue $159,000 versus expenditures of $869,000. We are right now negative in that fund of $277,000. But when I extrapolate that out right now, we will receive more in our property tax distribution in June to bring that fund completely up. So by the time the reporting period is done, and it is kind of standard for corporations that don't have a large operating balance in that fund. We will continue to grow that. We'll do what we can to continue to bring that up. And by the end of the year, we may need to increase our transfer a little bit to just make sure we're positive for the end of the year again. Okay, so then on to school lunch. Revenues. Our revenues are, with the reimbursement, we're doing pretty good in our revenues. We received $94,000 this month alone. We just took a claim for this next month, and we were claiming a little over $1 million. So in reimbursement. So we should be doing as well as we can expect in that fund. School nutrition expenditures. Again, standard $114,000 for our salaries and our food expenses. We are hoping that the FDA will increase the reimbursement rate in the next season, but I'm not sure that they will. Going ahead for our year-to-date summary, we have received $248,000 with expenses of $270,000. There is a little, there's an additional reimbursement that comes in June that will help us maintain a status quo on that fund. I did not give you the move forward to the textbook rental fund or curriculum materials is really where I want to get better new terminology, and I'm not used to saying it yet, but that's what we need to start thinking is curriculum materials, not just textbooks. So that fund, I did not share the expenses because we had none this last month, so I only shared the revenue this month. And the revenue for the month, we did receive our state reimbursement, so that is the The reimbursement we received was $49,000 for the year for our students on systems. So that brought us to positive in that fund. We now have $25,000. We did not have any expenses this month. And I don't expect to have expenses until the end of the school year when we would be buying new materials for the next school year. And we do have $3.2 million in our bank account. I'm going to get you a slide for the next month going forward. I'm showing you what our bank balance is. I don't know that I've done a good job of that. I apologize.
Any questions, board?
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Tanya for the extra work she put into this presentation this month. I think it's a lot a lot clearer, and it'll be a lot clearer for everybody going forward. I know she worked pretty hard on this, so thank you for that. And if there's no other questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve the financial report. Mr. Raymer? Mr. Brubaker? Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries 6-0. Okay, sorry about that. I had to get a clarification. We're going to move on to the consent items. Board, the minutes were in your packet. We have the regular claims, prepaid claims, payroll claims. Does anybody need any of that put up on the screen to review? Okay, we have a grant, which is a STEM acceleration grant. And Mr. Booker, could I get you to read the donations, please?
I yield the floor to Raju, please. I've got a little cold.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Donation of $350 to MES Read Across America Books for Children from Schematic Insurance. Donation of $200 to FFA program from an anonymous donor. Donation of $500 to the BAM program from an anonymous donor. Donation of $500 to the choir program from an anonymous donor. Another $500 donation to the drama program from an anonymous donor. $360 donation to the athletic department from Manchester Mercantile. Donation of $500 to the Science Olympia program from an anonymous donor. Donation of $415 to the Science Olympia program from Manchester Intermediate School. Donation of $16.26 to the Science Olympia program from various donors. Donation of $600 to the Senior Crown from an anonymous donor. Donation of $1,125 to the After Prom program from various donors. Donation of $200 to the Unified Bowling program from an anonymous donor. Donation of $214.57 to the Unified Bowling program from an anonymous donor. And donation of $250 to the Health and Wellness program from an anonymous donor.
Thank you. And according to my math, that's a little over $7,300 in donations. That's pretty remarkable support from our community. That's huge. Okay. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent items. Mr. Hensley? Mr. Booker seconded. Under discussion, I have a question. Mr. Whelan, could you elaborate a little bit on the STEM grant?
Yep. So, as you know, we became STEM certified last year, grades K to 12, and so the STEM acceleration grant is, I believe the Department of Education is the one who sponsors it, and it is a competitive grant. Sometimes when a school corporation already has made a lot of progress in a certain area, they're not as inclined to support those schools because they've already are underway, and so sometimes they look to those startups. So it's kind of we didn't know if we were going to get it or not, and we wrote it to support our programming out at MIS because we do have something pretty substantial at the elementary school. We also have, with all of our different, engineering, math, technology at the high school, we have that pretty well underway, and so this was to help bolster what we're able to offer at MIS. So when we actually were named as a recipient of this, I did speak briefly at the board, but we finally received that grant money that we can start utilizing for out there. So, I don't exactly know what all we're purchasing with it, but that's what we'll be using specifically MIS.
Any other questions or comments, board?
I just want to thank everybody for all of these donations. I mean, all of these are great programs. And then also the Chittick insurance, that was something that, from my understanding, there were some donors who wanted to make sure that every kid had a chance to take a book home at the end of that Read Across America. So that was something that they were helping support. So I think that's pretty awesome.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent items. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 6-0. Superintendent Whelan, recommendations for approval on personnel, resignations, ECA staff. Let's do 7-1 to 7-1-2.
Okay. So, as we said at the beginning, there was a deletion for 7-1-1-1-1, so that's removed. But the recommendations for employment, Laura Carandongo, MES, for, as you remember, we're adding first grade dual language immersion this year, so she'll be the Spanish teacher part of the first grade dual language. She is she already has experience teaching dual language in another corporation, so I'm pretty excited about this pickup. Brooke Kistner as a paraprofessional, and she has a child in this corporation, so I think we're going to have her for a while. Caitlin Gross is a business teacher who will be replacing Mrs. Leifer in her position, and I'm really excited. Comes very highly recommended for this, so I'm excited about that opportunity as well. For ECA staff, we have two, Adam West as assistant softball volunteer, and then Allison Kaufman as athletic support and supervision. And if you remember, this is a position we added as an ECA stipend at when we went through negotiations as support for our athletic director to provide someone to help supervise some of those. And the springtime is pretty crazy with all the baseball, track, softball. It's pretty busy, so I'm excited to have Ms. Kaufman working with that. Resignations, we only had one, and that was Thomas Barger as a custodian at the junior senior high school. And I want to thank Tom for his service to them. So that's all of them that I have.
Okay, under recommendations for approval under 7.1 to 7.12, I would entertain a motion to approve. Mr. Raymer, Mr. Brubaker, any comments, questions? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, approved 6-0. Mr. Whelan, LED lighting proposal from Energy Harness.
Okay, so as you know, this is something that our corporation has been exploring for a while. Energy Harness was actually here probably about a year or so ago, maybe even more, as one of the proposals, and then kind of pushed pause on that process. And so we started exploring that again. Had several companies basically bid on this and bring proposals to us. Energy Harness was the best price, as well as they did have an option for pretty cheap financing. And we did have them do an example retrofit over at MES, and I will tell you that it looks really nice, and they were able to complete it in very short time frame. So they're estimating, and it's difficult to estimate. The cost of energy is going up, and so I think this is a great time to do it. They're looking at MES it taking about 18 months for a return on our investment, and then at the junior senior high school about 21 months to return on our investment. This is something that a lot of corporations have already moved to, and so I'd like, with those are the two largest facilities that we have, I thought those were a good place to start. Ultimately, I do see this as something, if it goes well, that we would look at the rest of the buildings in the corporation. So I am proposing that we get started with Energy Harness. I will tell you that one of the things that they're able to do is do the work during the evenings when students are not present, so we wouldn't even need to necessarily wait till the summertime to get this project taken care of.
Could you clarify again which buildings?
It's MES and then the junior senior high school.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the LED lighting proposal from Energy Harness as recommended by the superintendent. Mr. Booker?
Second.
Mr. Raymer, second. Further discussion, questions?
And this can start immediately?
Pretty close. They had already... They tend to keep a decent amount of inventory on hand, and so once this gets approved, then once we sign the contract, we'll talk with them about what that timeline looks like. But they really felt like it was something we could move forward with pretty quickly.
Okay, since this is a contract, I'm going to do a roll call vote. I vote yes. Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. Superintendent Wheeler, contract with Hagerman is the CMC.
So this is, we had already agreed to have Hagerman on as our CMC. However, once we approve that, then we have to actually approve the contract with them. And so that is in your board packet and on our website. It is kind of long, but it's pretty standard as far as the CMC contract goes. I had Eric with Garmin Miller look over it, and he said it's pretty standard. Didn't see anything that would stand out that we need to question. And then legally, Mr. France looked over it and didn't see any issues as well. Is that accurate?
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the contract with Hagerman as the CMC that was in your contract for the superintendent's recommendation. Mr. Brubaker? Mr. Hensley? I'm going to do a roll call vote because this is a contract too. Once again, I'll start. Yes. Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 6-0. 7.4 resolution to explore purchase of property. Mr. Superintendent Wheeler?
I'd actually like to ask Mr. France first to just kind of explain the general process. If as a corporation we're looking to purchase property, kind of what are those steps for that?
So the first one is the resolution that would be in front of you tonight. The board has to pass that they were interested in purchasing this property. Notice that has to be published. Good. Notice that has to be published. There is a remonstrance period for taxpayers. It's only 15 days. Assuming nothing happens, then we have to have 2 appraisers appointed, and then the maximum amount we can pay for the property is the average of the 2 appraisals. process is pretty simple.
And so the board, if we decided to pursue actually purchasing it, would they be basically voting on an amount to offer them, or how does that work? Sorry to put you on
The
this
board would essentially approve the ultimate amount, whether or not the board votes. I would say that shouldn't happen in open, meeting. Kyle or myself could negotiate that with the property owner, but we're pretty much set what the maximum would be anyway. So there's not a whole lot we can do except for going below that.
So what we're looking at, one of the things through conversations, whether it be when I was taking my classes or when I'm talking with other superintendents, is something they've always recommended is just knowing who your neighbors are, because if something comes up that's bordering the property that your district owns, you should look at it to see if that's something that would assist you, because once we're landlocked, and so there might be things that we want to expand on in the future, and if that's something we want to do but we don't own the property to do it, there's nothing you can do at that point. One of the things with this upcoming building project is that we're losing a good piece of parking lot in between the two buildings, and we're also where our current bus lot is going to be affected, and so we're looking at are there some potential places around that would assist us, and it's not necessarily this is what we're going to do, but it's important to explore the option in case that's something we choose to do. So the piece of property that this resolution is asking about is the one that sits right next door to us outside my office, and so really what my understanding of this resolution is that if you guys approve it, then it gives me the opportunity to go ahead and take those next steps to see what the value of that property even is. Is it something that the landowner is wanting to sell it to us for that value? And so that's kind of where I am in this process. So I've always been told it's good to explore those options for bordering property. In this case, I think that it could potentially help us as we lose some space with the building project.
Okay, I entertain a motion to approve the resolution to at least look at this process. Mr. Booker, did you have your hand up, Mr. Raymer?
It's fine.
Okay. Mr. Booker made the motion, Mr. Raymer seconded it. Any further discussion or questions?
So this is just the approval to explore, right?
Pretty much, yep. That's right.
Yeah. We still have to publish the notice that that's our intent, but nothing locks us into purchasing it.
And just to be clear, it's not something we have to purchase. We've got other options, but it's the possibility that if the price is right, it might work.
And we can only go to the highest appraised value, correct? Of average of the two, correct?
Yeah. And that's what, in all honesty, that gave me a little more comfort in this process. I have never explored this option before, and knowing that there is a limit set, which good. It's taxpayer money. We don't want to get into this bidding war. The housing market's a little goofy right now anyhow, and so knowing that this is the most we could potentially offer, I think is a good thing.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Mr. Prince, I do have one other question on that. Is there a time limit that we would have to purchase it by? If we come to after the appraisals are done, how long is that good for?
There's not one that's specific in the statute, but I would say if they're over 2 years old, then we would need to get their license.
Okay, now we have the resolution on the Heartland Career Center that was in your packets. Were you?
Yep, I'll talk. I don't know that he's available yet, so I had texted him. He did. So Mike Kefever, the superintendent at MSD of Wabash County, he had made a proposal, and Heartland Career Center is a consortium of 5 sending school districts, and so there's sometimes where the representatives from each school corporation, which Mr. Turflinger is our representative from Manchester, there are certain things that they get to vote on in regards to the Career Center, but there's other things that do need to be agreed upon by each individual board. And one of those is how Heartland is funded, and this MSD had brought a amended option to the board this year, and so we're looking at if they would need approval from each one of the boards to then proceed. And so currently, the way the funding works, and I'll do my best to explain this, and I'll tell you it's a little bit complicated. It doesn't work the same way as our school itself because all of the sending schools are helping to fund it. And so currently, once we receive all the grant money from the state, the Perkins grant money, which helps to support all CTE money or programs, after that happens, then each one of the schools has their remaining share of the money that we're sending to be able to provide those educational opportunities. So some of it is funded by grants, but some of it's funded by the schools. And so currently, with our share, we're responsible, or the way that it's determined what our share is 75% of it's based on the ADM, or the number of students the corporations have in grades 10 and 11 that year. The other 25% is calculated based on the AV, which is the assessed valuation. So if you remember right, the ADM, that student count, is the money that comes from the state. And then the AV, that's the local tax dollars that helps to fund that. Currently, the way our school district works is that the operations fund is funded by the AV, which is local tax dollars, and the educational fund is funded by ADM, which is student count in the state dollars. Did I get that right? Okay, I want to make sure I'm correct. So I do have something from Mr. Kefever, and I did share this with the board members on kind of his or their rationale for this proposal. Oh, actually, Mr. Kefever is wanting to call in, so let me see if he wants to call or
I'll pull this up.
I'm not sure he said he'll call in, so I'm just... I'll just give him a call and put him up to my
I can get him here real quick if he wants to do this or that, either way.
Call my Kefever. Hey there. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and put you on my speakerphone and then hold you up to my mic, and we'll see how that works, okay? All right, thank you. Okay, let's see how this works for us. Okay, can you hear me? Can they hear me? Yay or nay? Give me a second. I'll see if I can turn my volume up. Okay, try it again.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
I think it'll work. Yeah.
Okay. What mic number is yours?
8. Give me 1 second. We're going to see if we can turn my mic volume up a little bit.
Okay.
Can you try again, Mike?
Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yep, that works better.
Then I have Dr. Kuhn here as far as he's Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, so he might be able to help answer questions.
Are you going to go ahead and talk about your rationale then?
Sure, if that's okay. So I don't know if they have anything in writing from me, or I can just start sharing that right now.
If you want to go ahead and just share what your rationale is, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for letting me be a part of your meeting. We just finished up our meeting a few minutes ago, and so I'm glad this was able to work out. At least I can share the rationale. So. Heartland Career Center utilizes 2 funds to pay their expenses. They call one the Capital Projects Fund and the other the CTE Vocational Grant, and that's the share of balance that we're really talking about. So the amendment of this Heartland Career Center operating agreement that the MSC of Wabash County is proposing only impacts the CTE Vocational Grant, so that's share of balance. And so the rationale for this change is because of the funding changes that occurred between the state of Indiana and the school district. So the current Heartland Career Center operating agreement bases the CTE or the vocational grant fees on the assessed valuation of each school district, even though the education fund is no longer supported by the AV. So several years ago, the state made it so that the education fund is only supported by student ADM, you all know that, to pay educational expenses. The proposed amendment to the agreement reflects the new funding process. So the current Heartland Career Center operating agreement, in my opinion, is archaic in that the monies that we receive from the state comes from the state and not from assessed valuation. And when the original agreement was created, so we or the school districts, the 5 sending schools, we're not necessarily the sending schools, we are actually these schools. There's 2 other sending schools, but we are the owners. Pay the share of balance from the education fund, not from the operation fund based on AB. So due to the various AB values of each school district, the amended agreement affects school districts differently. So for example, if the proposal, the current percentages are 75% for enrollment, and that's for students in grades 10 and 11, and that's not enrollment in Heartland Career Center, but that's enrollment into the schools. So right now it's 75% for the enrollment and 25% for assessed valuation. If we would change this 5% each year, or for example, this coming year, if it was 80% and 20%, Manchester Community Schools would have paid $364 less this year. It changes each year because it's based on enrollment and based on AB. So that percentage would actually, or the dollar amount would actually increase if we went to 85-15, to 90 to 10, to 95 to 5, and then finally 100% to 0. So one thing I want to make sure, MSC of Wabash County is not proposing any change to the Heartland Career Center Capital Projects Fund because the Capital Projects Fund is paid out of the operations, which is based on the AV to support that fund. So to emphasize again, of course, the current education fund is not based on AB. And so the final costs that were given for 2022 and we'll just do MSD in Manchester, but MSD of Wabash for the Capital Projects Fund is $51,706. Manchester is $28,610. So we're not asking to change anything there because Capital Projects is based on AB, assessed valuation. And so since we have a higher AB, then we would be paying more. Other schools pay as little as $15,000, $19,000, $24,000. Manchester pays the second largest amount because they have the second largest assessed valuation. So you can see that MSD pays a little over 37% of the capital projects, and so we're not changing that again. So I just want to make sure that you know that. So again, MSD is asking to amend the Heartland Capital Projects Fund formula, even though, and I will say this too, even though that a third of those expenses are for education purposes, which the school district would pay from the education fund and not operations fund. And so all of this data, and I know Mr. Whelan has this also, but this comes to us from Heartland Career Center, the Heartland Career Center 2022 payment schedule and computations, the official ADM, which was 9/17/2021, and then the certified assessed valuation. So my question that I put down is, if we were to create a career center today, would we even consider including the AB into that formula with the share of balance? And so the formula, again, in my opinion, is archaic. And for several years now, I would say it's, we would not formulate a formula like this if we were creating a brand new career center. So, in my opinion, the amendment aligns with the current funding provided by the state of Indiana. So that's really the rationale behind why MSD of Wabash County is proposing the change to this agreement. This agreement was also changed in 2018. I was a part of that in 2018, and in 2018 there was discussion that we would actually change this periodically. A lot of things happened between them, different changes in superintendents. We've had COVID, and so we brought this up again because it does say in agreement that the board of managers, which of course there's a board member from each school district that sits on that board of managers, can bring that up, and Mr. Driscoll at MSD of Wabash County brought that up. So questions, comments?
This is for Mr. Kuhn. Unless you can answer it, Mike, no offense, but the business people in the area might have better knowledge. So I know you guys, you're saying that your remaining share you're paying out of education fund. Can you pay it out of operations, or does it have to come out of education fund?
He's the expert, so I guess I can answer it, but he's going to answer it because he's the expert.
Okay.
There is an account that you could use to take it out of operations fund. The issue that you run into that is really it's about the revenue, and so when those funds were created, part of this whole archaic formula was based off of when we used to have the old general fund. And that general fund paid for everything except for capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement. And that general fund was supported, a certain percent was supported by AB, and a certain percent was supported by state dollars. And then when the state changed that and made it all revenue stream by state dollars, that was never changed in the Heartland agreement for that. Then you check into today where they changed the funds now, and they changed the general fund into the education fund, and they changed the transportation, bus replacement, and capital projects into the operations fund. They took some of those accounts out of the education fund and moved them, as far as expenses are concerned, into the operations fund. And then they allowed us to transfer revenue from the education fund to cover those expenses that were out of the education fund, or used to be out of the education fund. So we're still covering those expenses because those were general fund expenses out of education fund. And I would assume most school corporations are still doing that, unless they have a real healthy operation fund balance that they would choose to take taxpayer dollars and put it into a superintendent's salary or whatever the case might be. That transfer is used to cover that. And where are you transferring that money from is from the state dollars that we're receiving per ADM. So the answer is yes, we could pay it out of operations, but then we would just be transferring money from the education back over to that operation account to cover that, as long as if we didn't take us over our 15%.
Sure. Other questions from board members?
Would you clarify, didn't the state go from 5 silos of money, the different categories that you were this Dave Turflinger, board president, Didn't that all transpire in 2018 when this last agreement was modified?
No, that did not go into effect until 2019.
No, I knew it was fairly new because that's when I got elected.
The law went into effect 2019, and it didn't get activated until July 1st of 2019. So that would have been for the next school year that you would have created those new funds and accounts.
Okay. My other question is for Mr. Kefauver. Who collaborated? You said MSD is asking for this. Which other school districts collaborated with you on this plan?
No one else collaborated. It was it says in the agreement, in the Heartland agreement, that a board of managers can bring that up, and so obviously we worked with Mr. Driscoll about this, knowing that here again the whole premise behind this is it's an archaic agreement that needs to be changed, and yes, it will affect some people positively and some people negatively, but that's the same thing that happened when the state did it. When the state did changed everything where the money follows the students, before the money followed the students, schools that were having declining enrollment were still getting increases, and schools that were increasing enrollment were getting the same kind of increases. And so that's why they said, okay, the way to do this is that the money has to follow the students. And so we are just looking at aligning this with how the state is providing educational funds for our students. So it's just us, just MSD is proposing this. Anybody can propose anything on that agreement as far as that goes. I mean, if any school district wants to propose something, I followed the steps, and Mr. Driscoll followed the steps, and that's why we're doing this now too, because it's interesting to note that the board of directors or the board of managers, I think you're still on that board, actually do not approve or vote on these proposals, but every school corporation or every school district has to vote on it.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right, and that's why I asked Mr. Kefauver and you to be a part of this meeting. What do you expect from us tonight? Do you expect us to take action on this tonight?
Well, I would hope that we could do that unless there's not enough questions answered. If there's not enough questions answered, you could table it. You could give the questions to Mr. Whelan to give to me, and I could answer those questions for you to do it at a later date. I don't know when you would do that. I know Mr. Hobbs at Heartland will be starting to work on the 2022-2023 budget, but I think with technology, you could very easily put some of those cells in there if you could leave it the same of the 75-25 and change it to the 80-20 pretty easily. But I'm not the one doing that, so I shouldn't be talking for him. But I think Dr. Kuhn here would be able to say with computers and how that works, it would not be that big of a deal. So anyway, to answer your question, if you have enough information to vote on tonight, that would be great. But if you don't, ask more questions. We'll be happy to answer those questions, and then you could vote on it at a later date.
Okay, so here's my next question. Before I ask my next question, does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I kind of did. So, Mike Henley, so the formula, shifted to the account is basically a cost shift, right? Do either one you know what's going to happen with those formulas between now and next year? And then the CTE changes, what's going on with the CTE world, the programming?
Mike, the one part of that I missed out what you said, and I didn't quite hear what you said, though. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can repeat that or not. So.
Well, I sort of follow your logic on the shift in accounts, basically. But basically, the net effect of this is a cost shift, right? From certain schools to other schools.
Yes. If I understand correctly, what you're asking is the net cost will shift from one school to the next, or school districts. Is that what you said?
Yeah, and then the second part is, do we know what kind of effects that we're going to come up with funding formulas in the future? And then your part about this, where they shifted accounts, in other words, are they going to, is there future changes coming down that's going to basically, reverse this or change any decision we make? And I'm really, to be honest with you personally, I'm not really ready to make a decision on this. So
I don't.
Whatever.
We haven't heard anyone even whisper any changes as far as the school funding. As far as if I'm understanding your question correctly, we haven't heard anybody even talk about any changes. I see us having the funding stream, the revenue that we get, the money follow the student. It's going to happen for a long, long time. But you're right. I mean, that could change, but we just don't know that, and it kind of depends on who's in legislation and things like that. So.
And then we kind of got a lot of volatility in the CE world as far as the programming. If that's kind of hard to keep up with itself. Sort of got a building project, so I'm kind of in my mind I'm sort of wondering why you're bringing this up now with everything that's going on.
Well, here, let me give you the reason why. That's a very good question. So in 2018, when I was there, my understanding was that we would change this, and my understanding was that we would change it periodically. And that's why it even says it if I was, hindsight's 2020, but if I'd have done it too, again, I would have asked them to put in there what some of us as superintendents talked about, and that was to incrementally change this like I'm asking to do now. And so part of it is, it's just one of those things that this has been going on for a lot of years now, that I believe it has been archaic, and so that's why we're just bringing it up again. So, yeah, about 12 years now. So it's just not how the funding is done. And so that's why, COVID happened. There's a lot of things. We were going to bring this up earlier, but, 2018 was changed. And then a lot of things happened, and we just brought it up. The timing isn't because of anything specifically. It's just that it needed to be brought up again because it continues to be, it's not following how we are receiving our revenues and how the expenses work. And as far as answering your question with the CTE really, that really just becomes then the share of balance that we have, because the dollars that we receive, whatever that budget is, let's just make it round numbers. If it's $1 million and we receive $500,000 from all of our corporations for CTE dollars, then the share of balance is going to be $500,000, and then it's split with that formula. So that's really the easy way of how that happens. So yeah, you're right. I mean, things can change that way. And if it does, then we still have the same formula, though. The formula is still going to be constant.
This is Dave Turflayer. I did some checking with the State Board of Accounts, who referred me to the Governor's Workforce Task Force. And, the state's really opened up the money funds here going forward on CTE. And the gentleman that I talked to actually said, when the state increases money, you can look for more rules. And I'd like to compliment you guys. You did a pretty good job of giving us the pass data. The problem I have is you have declining enrollment. We just went through COVID. We're all fighting the charter school thing, which is people's rights. But at the end of the day, if one opens in Wabash County, we're all, my concern, I guess, getting right to the point, is what's going to happen with the funding to Heartland if there's an unforeseen thing in this. And you said that you guys brought this, which is within your rights. You're asking to change the operating agreement, but the research that I did, this thing worked from 1965 until 2018. The state changed the funding in 2019. So all that said, here's my question. Would you gentlemen have a problem if we tabled this and you took it back to the 5 superintendents and the 5 business managers and work out something like they did in 1965 that's fair to everybody?
Yeah, I'm open to do more discussion because I guess it kind of depends on, everyone does a little bit differently on how they do their expenses and what accounts that they use. And so when we talk about being fair to it, it's interesting because, I don't know, if one person's going to, or if one school district's going to pay more and one's going to pay less, it's going to be hard to ever agree on in any of that, I guess. But I think it has to follow the money follows the student, and so. But I'm okay with tabling it, though. But I'll tell you that we probably would not get anything done for this coming budget year if we did do that. So it's kind of up to maybe Yeah, so I'm open to whatever. And there's been good discussion. I know Mr. Whelan's done a lot of research, and there's been a lot of great questions, and makes us all learn more. And I've been doing this now. This is my 6th year, and I think I understand it quite a bit. Yeah, also I can learn too. So. Yeah.
And I don't know if any of the other board members have a question, but I just want, if this was housed in your facility and you're hiring maintenance people to clean that space, is that coming out of your education fund or is that coming out of your operations fund for those maintenance personnel?
I'll let Chris answer that. So, by the definition of the fund, we take it out of the operations, but like I said before, the funds were set up so that you transfer money from the education fund still to cover that expense. So that expense is not, even though the expense is coming out of the educator, out of the operations fund, the revenue that supports it is coming out of the education fund.
Yeah, that's the biggest point right there. The revenue that we are receiving comes out of that fund. So, and that's why they did that. I mean, that's why they said that you could do it, because in the past, the general fund had the custodians and superintendent and all that in there, and they said, okay, we want you to put that in the operations. So I'm just reiterating what Chris said very succinctly. So that's why it's done that way, and because
So would you guys have a problem tabling this for a year, leaving the funding formula the way it is, the way it's been since 2018, and sit down and have discussions with the 5 superintendents and the 5 business managers and, bring this thing kicking and screaming into 2023?
Well, the bottom line too is if 3 school boards do not vote yes on the proposal, then it's not going to happen anyway in 22-23. So I'm open to having more conversations. I mean, that's we have waited, but we've waited a long, long time, and here again, and I cannot prove it, but I remembered like it was yesterday that we said in 2018 when we did this that we would gradually get this to the point where it was the money following the revenue, follows the students. So that's how we're going to do the same thing at Heartland Career Center. But I knew, So anyway, we've been waiting a long time. Yeah, can we wait another year? Sure.
Well, and I guess there's no harm in each board voting. And I mean, if there's 3 votes no, then it is tabled because anybody can bring it up again next year as a revised version of this. I mean, there's nothing against
That's exactly right. So, that's exactly right.
Okay.
And I'd like to say, yes, Dave, again, I'm a lot more comfortable if I got 5 superintendents sending me a recommendation that says this is a good idea versus one. I mean, I understand we have the old copy of the operating agreement and the new one, and like I said, that's all I've heard since I sat down on the board is collaboration, and I just feel like we'd be better off to go that way, just being completely honest.
Well, and I don't disagree, but I think the situation is when some schools are paying a lot more than other schools, and the schools that are paying less because of the percentage are probably going to say, well, I want to continue to pay less. I mean, that's probably human nature. And so I think it would be difficult to say that anybody's going to agree on everything. And even this proposal, I mean, I knew it was going to be, there's going to be questions, but I still think we've given enough information to say that this is the route to go. This is what we talked about. Why did we change it in 2018? Those superintendents at the time, including myself, decided, okay, this was the right thing to do back in 2018, and we were going to go ahead and look at having an incremental change every year. But that wasn't necessarily, in hindsight 2020, I would have really said, let's go ahead and put that in there, because the reason why to do it incrementally in a short amount of time, not a short amount of time, but a small amount of time, so it didn't hurt those school districts that do have to pay their equal share. And so, that's the difference. So,
okay.
All right. I know it's a long time, but if you have more questions, certainly ask. So.
Okay. I appreciate it. Hey, thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate it. And thanks, Mr. Coon, too. I forgot about you. Thank you.
See you guys.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. France. Did you get a chance to look at this agreement?
I skimmed it, but I did not get to go through it.
Okay, so tabling this is not like us abstaining, which is a no vote, is a vote not cast. Abstaining is a vote not cast, right? Yeah. Okay, so if we table this, it doesn't get counted as a vote not cast. How's that gonna, because, you know.
Well, you gotta have a motion in a second.
Well, I understand, but I want to get the legal question first.
Essentially, the amended operating agreement would not go into effect unless there are three yes votes. So abstaining or tabling is not necessarily a no vote, so the board can vote on it. But it's not really a no against it.
Okay, so if we have 2 yeses and 2 nos and we table it, what happens?
It doesn't go into effect. We just wait for Manchester's vote or another school changes the vote.
Thank you.
Can I speak? I know, so here's kind of, and I know I've have explored this quite a bit, and ultimately it's the board's decision on if you choose to vote and move forward, if you choose to table it, but really tabling it is a no vote because they need 3 yeses for the Heartland membership to make this in effect. I will agree with Mr. Kefauver that I believe this is an archaic document. They've tried to amend it as there's been changes to how we are funded locally. However, I don't know how you amend something that isn't even using the same language as what our state funding is currently. So right now, it's very clear that we have an operating fund and an education fund. One of them is funded through local tax dollars. One of them is funded based on our student count. I don't see why we don't pursue something at Heartland that reflects that. They have the same sort of, operational type costs, things that should come out of, in my opinion, out of operations fund. And there's certain things that should come out of the education fund. And I don't think that this proposal is looking at that. They still have the capital funds, or capital projects fund, but that's just a small piece of the operating fund from what I understand. So all of that's currently in our operations fund, plus everything that's in our education fund, is what they're proposing to pay 100% out of ADM rather than it being where it is. And I understand that, okay, different corporations can transfer up to 15%. They did give that leeway, but once again, maintenance. Let's just talk about maintenance and custodial people alone. If that was happening in our building, we would pay for them out of operations. We couldn't pay for them out of education, so we would pay for them out of operations. Yet at Heartland, because it's off campus, we're going to say to pay for them out of education fund, and I don't follow that. So my thought is, in the current format, I'm not saying the percentage shouldn't change. I would need a lot more convincing to get it down to 0% based on AV. And so I don't support what the language is. I do support the idea of looking at it and trying to just scrap the whole thing and revamping it to truly mirror how we're getting funds. And I don't know if that's going to help us financially or hurt us financially, but to me, that is the fair way to do it, is truly start over from scratch, because it is a completely different system than what we had in 1965. So I don't know why we're holding on to bits and pieces and trying to change other pieces to mirror something that is completely different.
I think he answered the question about what people were asking about at the end. He said in 2018, 5 superintendents came together and agreed upon this new deal. Well, then we would talk about it year after year, so forth and so on. But that hasn't happened this time. We haven't had 5 superintendents and even business managers included sit down and talk about this document, like you said, Mr. Tripoli. We haven't had that this time, so that's why it's getting pushed. It feels like it's getting pushed instead of actually getting agreed upon.
Well, I can tell you, I've sat on that board down there every year since January 2019, and this is the first time this subject has ever come up, and it was presented to our board, and we just said, you gotta come to the school board. And I would just like to also add, operations funds, we got this document that says this, and Mark's got these funds, and we got these funds. But at the end of the day, if we hit property tax caps, if it's all on the student count and enrollment goes down, you have less funds, and every member school district is liable for the maintenance of that building. So are we going to end up taking money, and this is a question, I'm not making a statement, are we going to end up taking money out of our education fund to put a roof on the building down there? We own 1/5 of it, and if the roof starts leaking over the welders, we don't have a choice, whether we knew it was coming or not. And we're working on some stuff, but that's on another topic. I'm just saying, we had Darren Bates in here, we talked about tax caps, we talked about the different funds, and the things don't match. So,
and that's I commend Mr. Kiefaber, Mr. Kuhn, Mr. Driscoll, because I do agree with them that it's not reflective of what the current funding is, and so they came with a proposal that they felt was a better reflection of how we receive money. So I certainly don't fault them. I actually thank them for doing the work, because they're trying to make it match up better, and this is what they came up with. I just don't necessarily agree with what they came up with. So.
Well, in business, you try to make everything a variable cost as much as you can, right? So the student count takes that variable. In this case, I'll take exception to when, whoever made the statement that people aren't paying their fair share, because they are, based on the agreement and the formula that's currently in place. So, that's not really a true statement, but what this is really about is not about tax caps, but it's a shift, right? It's a cost shift, and there should be a more, like I'm saying, there's enough stuff going on right now that there should be a comprehensive approach to this. And look at that. If I sit here and think about, okay, why is MSD in Manchester paying more than, if that statement's true, why is that?
Farm ground.
Or RID, we got more assessed value. So, you can also look, if you don't want to pay that much, we can take on some more land and more students, right? And what I'm saying, I'm just saying that because there's different avenues to look at this, and I do think, funding's alive in CTE, but you don't know what's going to happen in that thing. So I'm not comfortable even, we can vote if you want, but I think there needs to be a more comprehensive look at this with more people involved, basically. So,
and for budgeting purposes, Mark's sitting in a holding pattern down there trying to plan his budget for next year because he doesn't know if it's going to be this or if it's going to be that. So,
well, really, his costs are going to shift, right? I don't see the net effect. What I worry about more is the long-term ramifications of this on Heartland and people, with the state kind of pushing CTE within each school. I think Heartland's a heck of an asset for this county, in the area as a whole. And so I'm more worried about, some of the, don't want to really say feelings, but, the partnership going forward, basically, of Heartland. So,
and I guess I agree with Kyle and Mr. Kiefaber and Mr. Kuhn. It is an archaic document. It was wrote in 1965 and a few amendments in 2018. So, if it needs to be done, like I said, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but if it was a collaboration, I'd feel a lot more comfortable, and it's not. So, with that, does somebody want to make a motion?
How do we send the message that
we're open to this.
Well, I'm sure they're watching our live broadcast.
And that's fair, but
Superintendent Whelan can send a letter and just say, hey, the board, this is what the board decided to do, but, you know, we encourage you to go forward with collaboration with the other districts. And
Go ahead. I'll make a motion to not approve the amendment here, the new amendment, with the assumption that the superintendents and/or business managers will be a part of the conversation among all 5 schools going forward.
I don't think we can tell them that. We
can't tell them that, but in hopes that further conversation can happen. How's that?
I think you're going to have to modify your motion to just make it a no with the discussion item that Superintendent Whelan and Mr. France sent.
I make a motion to vote no on the amendment.
How about make a motion to table this and with further comment between the superintendents or something? You can't make a motion. You gotta make a motion and then vote, no, right?
Well, he made a motion to not approve the proposed amendment. So if we second it, we vote no, and then we send a letter and say we voted no because we think you need to talk to everybody else.
It's essentially, if you vote for what the motion is, you're saying no, you would all, it's essentially the opposite of a motion to approve and nobody votes yes. So,
I don't know.
How about that? Either way, we can clarify exactly what is being voted on, but the motion is.
You can make your motion not to approve the proposed amendment to the Heartland Career.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Anybody want a second?
I will.
Mr. Raymer's got a second. Further discussion.
And I'll just say, obviously this vote will then take place at the Heartland board meeting based on this, I understand. So if it doesn't go through, I will be reaching out to Mr. Kefauver and see, because I do think we just need to look at it. Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, we are voting to not approve, so a yes vote means you're not approving it. Mr. Raymond?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hensley?
All abstained, but I don't understand what we're doing.
Okay, I'm going to vote yes. So we have
5-1.
501. Contract for financial management. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, contract for financial management software.
I'll turn that over to Mrs. Owen.
I don't know how many of you know that the software we currently use is actually DOS-based, and it was purchased in 2008 by the school system. So,
Do you stick a crank in? I'm sorry to interrupt, but do you stick a crank in there and play it up?
Pretty much. But it is time to upgrade. We have many of that run the financial software here at the district office. And Tony Miller, our IT director, was included, and we had presentations from there are 5 main players in the state of Indiana and school finance software. We picked the top 3. Well, I picked the top 3. We had 3 presentations, and BFF, which is voice, which is actually the software we run now, but it is now web-based, was our hands-down favorite. It is actually, out of the 3, the only one that is web-based. The others are working towards there, but they aren't there. So we unanimously approved us recommending this software change and until we get a signed contract, I can't tell us when we are going to upgrade. Probably 6 months or more out on the conversion, but this is currently the software we run, so the conversion should, in theory, be a lot easier. Software conversions are always a little dicey, but since they already know our structure, it's going to make it a little easier than with one of the other companies. Any questions?
Could you elaborate on some of the changes that this is, or savings, I guess is what the word I'm looking for?
Well, as I know some of the board members know, we actually, and I was shocked my first week here, Fatima in payroll actually prints on check remittance advices, printed remittance advices we purchased the stock for her to print these on for everybody's paychecks. Everybody gets a printed paycheck. This system will now have electronic. You'll log in and you will actually be able to see your pay stub. You'll also be able to get your W-2s. You will be able to see your 1095. All of those documents can be retrieved without calling. And this week the team is on vacation. So if somebody calls and says, "Hey, I lost my W-2, can you reprint that?" No. So there's just, I mean, the team can, but this week we can't. But they will do it themselves. So those are one of the main things. We're going to save the time and the money in printing and folding and stuffing those, and then she mails those out to our subs. She mails those, and they'll be able to log in and get that rather than having to use postage there. We will be able, currently when I run my reports for you, I have to actually I run a report and then I take the data and put it into my spreadsheet. I'll be able to export those reports right into Excel. I won't have to manually enter it. If I set up a report and run it, and then Darla can be in her office and run the same report and change things, or run my same report, we both have different numbers because we can change things that the other person doesn't know. We're running the same report. The new one, it'll be different. It will be user-based.
And you'll be able to run reports at the same time?
Yeah. We can run reports at the same time. We can run reports after the month end. Darla was on vacation. I did month end. I have one report that something happened and it's gone, and I can't rerun it because month end is over. So the numbers have changed because we started transactions. But if you can run a date-based software, you can run it by date. So I can go back in time and run that same report with those same numbers.
Forgive my ignorance, but are we still, is everybody getting electronic payment plus a printed one?
Yeah.
2008 is the last time this thing was updated.
Yes. That is right there the reason. Plus, okay, just so you know, we actually use a typewriter for purchase orders.
Hey, they're reliable. Okay.
We'll print purchase orders and receipts on plain paper instead of purchasing triplicate paper right now for purchase orders.
I had asked this question earlier in a different meeting, but could you elaborate when you say web-based, that does raise the security concern piece. Could you touch on that briefly, please?
I'm going to ask Tony to talk more about this. He was in our meetings, as I said. He asked all of those questions because that's his area of expertise, not mine.
Summarize.
May I say more? In actuality, the program that we're currently using was written for an older IBM system before DOS. And so when you imagine that we imported over to DOS and then Windows-based. So anyhow, let me get into the security part of it. One of the things we asked every vendor was, how can you ensure that my data is secure, and how can you ensure my data is available at all times, right? That's very important to us that we're able to access it. I will tell you that the first vendor we talked to, the platform was written in 2017. It runs on local machines, very little security, very little encryption. So the data, while may be available, is not very secure. And so there's concerns there. The next system we looked at was written in 2004. Just almost better, right? It also runs locally. And again, there's no data encryption on that. So not very secure at all. For the voice system, they are SAS 70 certified, which is something that accounting systems have to do for software as a service. In other words, if we're using a web-based service, they need to be certified as a SAS 70. And this ensures compliance and security, and it's the highest level of security they have for this type of software, and they pass that. Voice also uses a provider in downtown Indianapolis. That's where they have their servers. It's in a hardened, secure facility. No access unless you have the right credentials. And all that is tons of backup power. They have 22 internet providers that come into there. So if AT&T's primary internet into that building goes down, then they go to one of the other providers. That's all automatic. We don't have to worry about it. Our data is still available. Let's see here. That's called highly available for us. It's what we call it in the technology. Data is backed up to a co-location in Houston, Texas, every 7 minutes. Okay, it's duplicated. So again, if all of a sudden something were tragic to happen in downtown Indianapolis and that center no longer existed, our data is sitting in Houston, and we can have that available to us within 4 hours. They're not what they call a hot site, which is always ready to run. All our information, the website sits on the internet side, so you can access the website, but our data actually sits behind a firewall and a DMZ zone, which means that it's very hard to get the internet side into the database, so it's highly secure there. All the private information, such as Social Security, numbers, and things like that, is all encrypted in the database, not after. They back up, okay? Some of the others will back up and then encrypt it, but it's actually encrypted inside the database. So if somebody was able to get in there and get the data, which is very unlikely, they can't do anything with it anyhow because it is encrypted. Full backups are done weekly. We can insist for a backup at any point in time just by clicking a button. So I was very impressed with them. They have Boise has the vast majority, I don't even know overall between the old system and the new system, but they have 90 customers on the web base that switched over the last 4 years, I believe it is. The Lao system had 20 customers in the state of Indiana, and SSI had 40. So you can see the vast majority of the school systems are switching over to that.
Just to clarify, Board, Boise is the new CompuTrol, if you didn't catch that. So.
Out of the total 407 districts, this is a large number of them having this. Some of the larger districts, Carmel, I think the ADM is 15,000. They had to go to GAAP accounting and report in the GAAP. So they aren't using some of these softwares, the largest districts. But these are the standard in a school district our size.
So, Board, I guess basically what we have here is the IT guy, the business manager, and the superintendent saying we need to do this. And entertain a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Hensley? Mr. Bucher? Any further discussion and or questions?
I just want to know what the
ladies are going to do with their spare time. Just make their life so much easier.
We're just going to say I will just say, if you guys don't approve this, I'm not coming to work tomorrow because I have to work with them. And this is something they've tolerated for long enough. They all selected it as their number one. We have support from technology. It is number one. So I don't know what more you want.
Well, we will, the team is starting, she's going to the IASO classes. She wants to get her IASO certification in HR. And we need that. We need somebody that has more of those HR skills. That will free up some of her time to do that. And make sure our reporting is done early. And that kind of is one of the biggest things that I'm looking forward to.
For the record, I support it 100%.
Okay, since this is a contract and a purchase, Mr. Raymer.
Yes.
Mr. Booker.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Brubaker.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Mr. Hensley.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay. With that, we are at the Heartland update, and I'll be as quick as I can. I wish John Lippy was still here, but okay. Got some recognition here. Luke Metzger, an HCC student, is interning at Pre-Med Tech and is now helping recruit employees for the company. Dylan Stroud is interning at Premier Thermal as a welder. He signed an internship. And Thomas Fuller is a criminal justice HCC student who's interning with the Walmart Corporation during his last year of school, and he signed on to work with the Indiana National Guard in the same field after graduation. So pretty proud of those folks right there. This is really good news. The Gene Haas Foundation, the Haas CNC Machines, is awarding Heartland a $15,000 grant for scholarships. Can't use it for money, can't use it for programming, has to go for scholarships in the area of CNC machinists, CNC machine-based engineering, and also FIRST robotics teams. So that was a very unexpected surprise that we got that. They've supported us all along. I mean, Mr. Halverson and I can't think of the other gentleman's name, I apologize. They prepared it, and once again, I mean, this is the third year in a row that the Haas Foundation has given us money for either scholarships or programming. So, and this next one's really big. Vincennes University has pledged to Heartland $500,000 grant for Industry 4.0 equipment to allow HCC to offer the SACA curriculum that we currently offer. So in 2023, along with what we're doing, some of the other school districts will be able to start their kids into this SACA program. This is a huge asset for HCC to be able to offer students, and it's just it's like a team of mules with us. We've already got it here and up and running, so our students can kind of start it here and get exposed to it and take part of other things without traveling, and then if they make that choice at the 10th grade and say, hey, I want to pursue the gold level certificate, they'll be able to go down there, because this $500,000 is buying all the equipment that's necessary. The stuff we have, I think, covers what the first two. So that was pretty big. So that's all I got for Heartland. Mr. Hensley?
We'll just keep it brief tonight. I mean, pretty tumultuous session. So, Mr. Whelan did inform us we will get a little visit from our legislators, so appreciate that from them, right? Coming over and paying a visit. But I'd say this, just short and simple. It is, elections are in November. Misinformation is going to start flowing around, and emails and Facebook and stuff like that. So I just ask the people in the public, if something comes up versus, talking to other people and kind of, put more gas on the fire or whatever, give Mr. Wheel a call. He's a superintendent. If you're uncomfortable with that, then call one of the board members and have a conversation about things. Because I think a lot of time when election rolls around, things fly, basically. And so I've just asked if you kind of get to the truth about things versus sort of propagating any rumors or anything about the school corporation. We're in really good condition. I thought for the legislative session we had, things came out, fairly decent, right? A lot of activism, going on. So that's it for legislative update.
Public comments on anything? Superintendent's comments.
I'll follow up just a little bit on legislation. Things did work out pretty well at the state level. I'm very concerned at the federal level, and I brought this up in one of the other meetings that some of the waivers that were put in place as far as the school feeding program have not been renewed, and so starting after following June the 30th, all of those things are off the table. And I understand, like right now, basically every student is eating for free, and I'm not advocating for that to continue forever. There's plenty of people who can afford those lunches, but I'm more concerned about the ones who can't. And as far as federal funding, I think the school feeding program is one of the easiest to hold people accountable for. I mean, we are audited on a regular basis. The money we get from them, we can show them exactly how it was spent and how it reached the student. One of those waivers that I'm concerned about, will end up reducing the reimbursed amount by about $1 a meal, and that is considerable. I mean, when you look at the cost of everything going up, food including, I mean, if you go to the grocery store now, it's considerably more than what it was. And I don't know how they feel like we can go back to the pre-COVID prices and reimbursements and still be able to feed those students, what we are currently able to. And right now we're having to purchase a lot more food locally, which is typically more expensive than if we're buying from a large wholesaler. So I am really concerned. They basically have until June the 30th to fix the problem. From the sources I've gotten, they're not too eager to do that, and it is very concerning. It's almost like they're waiting for all the school lunch programs to fail before they then decide that it is a problem. I don't know how they can say that we can return to the previous reimbursement when they can go to the grocery store and see what those inflated costs were. So I'll now step off my soapbox on that one.
I have a question. You said $1 per meal. Is that $1 per meal at lunch and $1 per meal at breakfast? Because Becky said right now we're feeding like 250 kids breakfast every morning.
I believe one of the waivers has to do,
I'm not positive what the reimbursement rate will be for breakfast. I do for lunch. It will be $1, full $1. Our cost will be like $3.60 per meal, and that's our labor and food cost. And the cost of a carton of milk currently is 25 cents cost, and now it's going up to 30 cents. We've got a notification the cost of bread is going up 30%. The cost of our proteins are going up 30%. So I've actually been reaching out to Senator Braun. I emailed all of our senators. I had an email conversation. He did get back to me, and I pushed back a little bit again, and I invited him to come have lunch in our cafeteria and see what we do. So I'm hoping that we can get some.
Any other board questions? Comments? On the lunch thing? Okay.
I still have more comments though.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I step off my soapbox. Now I'm going to do some celebration. So I wanted to thank, Tony, Fatima, Darla, and Tanya. I know they spent a lot of time vetting the different options we have for the program. Now, they don't understand how much work is to come now that they are going to be making the transition, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a positive. I'm going to take some time off when they're going through that part as well. So it's been a month since our last board meeting, so there were several things, right? That weekend afterwards, we had some good celebrations. Our Science Olympiad teams finished the highest they ever have at the state meet. Middle school finished 7th, and the high school finished 10th. And once again, this is not a class-based thing, so we're competing against the big boys just like everybody else. And so I was really pleased. Compliments to Mr. Chinworth and all of the students for that. A couple of them were here presenting tonight, I believe. Also, the FFA, they had their leadership contest, and our chapter finished 2nd out of 16 districts. We also had 31 students who represented Manchester at the countywide honors band and choir concert. Our unified bowling team finished 17th down at the state meet. We had a lot of students participate in the high school musical, Once Upon a Mattress, and I was absolutely blown away. Like, it was impressive. If anybody had seen it, it just, for a high school production especially, holy cow, we got some talented kids. And so we also had a celebration. This had great turnout for the junior high and the high school dance. I did come for a little bit. No, I did not dance at all. I didn't want to embarrass myself or my daughter. So, and then once again, Mr. Hensley referenced this earlier. I received confirmation today from Representative Snow and Senator Zay will be here on Friday to recognize Shelley Leifer for her Teacher of the Year honors last year. And so they apologize they hadn't done it prior, but there were some limitations there. And so on Friday we'll be hosting them. I'll find out tomorrow morning on a phone call what all that entails. But I'm looking forward to having them here on our campus. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's all I have. Yep.
Okay. Any other school board comments? Okay, I got just a couple here. Superintendent Wheeler brought up the play. I took my grandkids to that. I can't even wrap my head around the amount of work that it took to pull that off. So kudos to anybody that had anything to do with that. And it's a success in my mind. I mean, I was completely entertained. But when I looked over at my 6-year-old and my 4-year-old granddaughter, and they were transfixed like they were watching cartoons at home, yeah, good job. That was awesome. The other thing is we sent out evaluations for Superintendent Wheelan today. Followed it up with a text, and I'm going to remind you here now. If you can get that, you can do it electronically, or you can print it off on paper. When you're done with that, send it to Mr. Shaw, Board Secretary, and as soon as we get them all back, we'd like to have those back by the 26th. We'll schedule an executive session and try and give you a 6-month evaluation done. That's all I got.
And the current version is not able to be edited. I'll share one with you that is. So.
With that, unless we got something else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
Mr. Hensley?
Second.
Mr. Raymer, all in favor? Opposed?